Chapter 951. Chance. The fans of Team 100 Blossoms often wish they could witness Blossoms and Blood again, but no one had thought that when they did, it would be in such a situation. This was a Blossoms and Blood with more splendor than any pro match they had seen before. This was because, in the online game, there were many more people to kill. The blood that splattered amongst the bright lights of flashing explosions created a blood-drenched scene. The players of Blossom Valley fell continuously. They were shocked, seething, unaccepting, but also unwilling to back down. That was when another flash of blades joined. Yu Feng had finally struck back, and the two broadswords locked together aggressively. The Blossom Valley players were panting for breath. They stared dumbly at the berserker called Another Summer of Sleep. Just who was this? He bore the words Heavenly Justice over his head, so was he that berserker from Team Heavenly Swords? Originally, normal players weren't nearly as perceptive as pro players, who could estimate the player behind a character from their playstyle alone. However, for many of 100 Blossom's old fans, Sun Jeping was a name they would never forget, and his wild and crazed playstyle was burnt deep into memories. As they watched Another Summer of Sleep, this long unthought of name surfaced in their minds. However, they didn't get the chance to question it further. Another Summer of Sleep and Dazzling Spring, a berserker and Spitfire duo that was once the target of their admiration and love, was mounting a furious offense against them. Yu Feng's berserker jumped out to defend, but was quickly consumed by the scene of Blossoms and Blood. It wasn't at all difficult to realize who, exactly, was protecting them now. The Team 100 Blossom fans also suddenly realized, had they been neglecting their new core player? All healers, heal Captain Yu, Blossom Valley's guild leader, Blooming Blossom, was the first to react and yelled out a command. He was a 100 Blossoms fan, but was also a department head in the club. At times like this, he could still keep his cool, and was the only member of their guild that still remembered what they had come here to do. He didn't want to see things like this, meeting Zhangjiao's Dazzling Spring and getting into such a mess. His wishes also represented Club 100 Blossom's wishes. The club was much more rational than the fans. They didn't want their fans to cling to Zhangjiao's shadow like this when the man refused to look back. Zhangjiao's influence in Team 100 Blossoms had become a handicap they wanted to overcome. The club had recently been continuously brainstorming a way to negate the effects that Zhangjiao's return to the glory scene as part of Team Tyranny had on Team 100 Blossoms. Blooming Blossoms had also attended many such meetings. Team 100 Blossoms fans were too stuck on the past, and didn't seem to care about their new core player, Yu Feng. This was a problem that the club was helpless against, and it gave them quite the headache. Yet now, seeing Yu Feng's berserker charge forth like a hero, defending against Zhang Jiali and someone who was possibly Sun Ziping's offense, Blooming Blossom realized that this was a chance they had to grab. The new hero of Team 100 Blossoms would be born on this day. No matter what, he had to make him shine. So Blooming Blossoms used his yell to make all of Team 100 Blossoms notice Yu Feng, to make everyone notice who it was that protected them when their once beloved duo had turned against them. Captain Yu. As expected, 100 Blossoms normal players soon yelled out this encouraging shout that came from their hearts. Don't worry about me. Everyone spread out, pull some distance and use ranged attacks to cover the area with firepower. Yu Feng's voice came out from within the Blossoms and Blood. It wasn't any sort of incredible plan, but it was like a light in the darkness for Team 100 Blossoms. All the Team 100 Blossoms players ran to obey. However, this was nowhere near enough to break Blossoms and Blood, only to lower its effectiveness. Under the cover of Blossoms and Blood, the extremely experienced veterans, Zhang Jiali and Sun Jeping, could still easily move about in this sort of AoE firepower coverage. The only one who was fighting the two head-on was still Yu Feng's berserker. Though Blooming Blossoms called for healing, they couldn't see Yu Feng's berserker at all amongst the flashes of light from the Team 100 Blossoms' former playstyle. If they got any closer, they might accidentally step into the Blossoms and Blood. Two healers whose names immediately darkened and were automatically kicked from the team showed everyone the consequences of approaching without careful consideration. The reason why Yu Feng had wanted everyone to not worry about him, scatter and keep their distance, was obviously because he didn't want them to get consumed by Blossoms and Blood and get killed. Captain Yu. In that moment, all the Team 100 Blossom players finally completely accepted their new core players. However, could Yu Feng alone break Blossoms and Blood? Zhang Jiali and Yu Feng's Blossoms and Blood had been a coincidence. It was probably impossible for them to repeat it or continue it. The real Blossoms and Blood had been crafted through an entire season of trying to sync up from the extremely talented Zhang Jiali and Sun Jeping. In the third season of the alliance, Blossoms and Blood had been refined and had swept through the alliance. All the powerhouses were shocked by this unseen playstyle and lost, disoriented. It was that season that Blossoms and Blood reached their peak, and were also stopped at that peak. Team 100 Blossom, who had stormed their way to the finals, eventually fell to Team Excellent Era, who didn't allow them to stop the attainment of their yet unchallenged third consecutive championship. Blossoms and Blood had been struck through by one Autumn Leaf's evil annihilation. God Yi Chu, having made that mark in history, made a shocking move after gaining the championship and accepted an interview. Though it was only through QQ, he had managed to leave a sentence that would be remembered by all. A few times is enough for a playstyle, so using it too much, doesn't that get tiring? However, even with this mocking sentence, Blossoms and Blood didn't become a joke because the only one who had the right to make light of it was God Yi Chu. If others wanted to say the same, they needed to break Blossoms and Blood first. No playstyle or tactic was unbreakable, but Blossoms and Blood was something invincible in the hearts of 100 Blossom fans, yet now they were hoping that Yu Feng would be able to break Blossoms and Blood. This was because this title no longer belonged to Team 100 Blossoms, but rather their enemies. Blooming Blossoms was secretly sweating in nervousness for him. This was a good chance for Yu Feng to take the lead, and the club had been hoping that he would be able to truly take the Team 100 Blossoms flag sooner than later, bringing Team 100 Blossoms fans away from clinging to the memories of someone who was no longer a part of their team. And now, this chance was right in front of them, but it really was a little too difficult. With Sun Ziping's injury forcing his retirement, Blossoms and Blood disappeared from the alliance. In those 2.5 seasons, the only one who had managed to break Blossoms and Blood alone was Yi Chu in the third season. Yu Feng was a very talented player, but had he reached the level Yi Chu had back then? There was probably no one who would believe that. Speaking of, no matter if it was Zhang Jiali or Sun Jeping, they had both passed their peak. Sun Jeping had even retired for so long due to an injury, but now he was somehow back. It was debatable if it was actually him or not though. These two weren't at the same level they had once been. On the other hand, Yu Feng was at his peak condition to play, so maybe he could really break this Blossoms and Blood. Blooming Blossoms was filled with hope. After all, using this to make an impression in the hearts of 100 Blossoms players would be far better than using your own pain to do it. This sort of tactic wouldn't be able to truly vanquish the lingering emotions 100 Blossom fans had for the past. Thoughts flew through Blooming Blossom's mind wildly, and he even considered if there was any way they could cheat to help Yu Feng. It was a shame that he couldn't think of any. This sort of pro-level face-off wasn't something that normal players could get involved in. Watching the party window, Blooming Blossoms noticed the health of Yu Feng's berserker dropping lower and lower, and he became more and more anxious. Then, he suddenly realized that because of the flashing light and shadows, they couldn't see Yu Feng struggle at all. In the end, it was probably just be a corpse, tossed out. With that, Yu Feng's efforts would be no different from that of someone who died as soon as they stepped in. How much acceptance this suffering could gain could be argued. A chance. A chance. Chance? This thought didn't exist in Yu Feng's mind. Stepping out like a hero was all a thing of the moment. He had heard Sun Jeping and Zhang Zhao's conversation. Did he want to end things like this? Yu Feng couldn't accept that, he was even furious about it. Since he was now part of 100 Blossoms, he understood better than anyone what Zhang Jiali meant to this group of fans. So when Zhang Jiali raised his gun at the Team 100 Blossoms players, he had charged out to stop it. Not only was this for Zhang Jiali, but also because he didn't want the players of 100 Blossoms to be hurt in such a way. Yet it was another Summer of Sleep who had popped up. He wanted to truly, cruelly, use this method to bid farewell to the Team 100 Blossoms fans. Yu Feng couldn't accept that at all. He stepped out to fight, not thinking of the consequences. He just wanted to do everything he could. He just wanted to battle. They were hard to deal with, as expected. Team 100 Blossoms had wanted to recreate Blossoms and Blood through having Yu Feng join. Yu Feng, of course, had researched this playstyle extensively as well, watching recording after recording of the old Blossom Duo's matches. So, he was more certain than anyone, that this berserker in front of him was truly the old first berserker, Sun Jeping. And when he was really up against Blossoms and Blood, he found that this playstyle was truly hard to deal with. I don't think I can do it. Watching his health fall to the bottom, Yu Feng took a deep breath. His protection of 100 Blossoms would have to come to an end here. Let him burn this last slither of health as brightly as possible. Yu Feng didn't spare a thought for anything else, directly activating Bloodthirst. This was a powerful status skill that berserkers gained at level 75. After their status was in Bloodthirst, berserkers could use their own health to increase their strength. Yu Feng's berserker didn't have much health left, so Bloodthirst's effects were limited. However, what was more important was the fight until the end attitude that this decision represented. When his health only had 1 point left, he struck his final blow and burned the rest of his life. A crimson flash of energy from his blade streaked out from the Blossoms and Blood, and yet that was when Blossoms and Blood was brought to an abrupt halt by this single slash. Dazzling Spring's attacks stopped and the flashes of light and shadows dispersed. Everyone saw that Dazzling Spring was lying there, somehow knocked down by Yu Feng's berserker. Chapter 952. A confusing chaotic situation. He broke through. Blooming Blossom was ecstatic, but after checking the health on Yu Feng's berserker, for a second, his smile wouldn't come out. Fortunately, the players from Blossom Valley reacted quickly. In an instant, the healers worked together and healed Yu Feng's berserker back to full health. However, Yu Feng's berserker just stood there staring into space. It was as if he didn't know that he had been rescued and thought he had died. Yu Feng really did think he had died. The outcome had astonished him. He should have been able to dodge that attack. This guy? You've become soft-hearted, Yu Feng heard another Summer of Sleep say. These words weren't directed at him. Haha, Dazzling Spring laughed, but didn't say anything. Another Summer of Sleep turned to look at Yu Feng. Little one, Blossoms and Blood looks as if it's birthed from the Spitfire's 100 Blossom style, but in reality, the berserker is the one in control of this playstyle's rhythm. If you want to see Blossoms and Blood reborn again, you'd better work hard, Sun Jeping said. Not waiting for Yu Feng to regain his composure, everyone in Happy entered the battle in an orderly fashion under Yishu's instructions. Yishu's Lord Grim led the charge. His myriad manifestations umbrella shook. It transformed into its spear form and shot forward. Zhang Jiali and Sun Jeping saw it from the corner of their eyes. What are you doing? Zhang Jiali shouted. You good for nothing. Cheating us to give the stage to you. What a waste of time. Give us control of the battle now, Yishu said and moved his spear. Zhang Jiali thought he was about to be attacked, so he had Dazzling Spring roll off to the side. However, Lord Grim was just faking it. He also moved to the side. From behind him, a handful of sand came flying out. Steam Bun Invasion had also joined the fray. Zhang Jiali dodged quite quickly, but Yu Feng's berserker was still just standing there staring blankly. The handful of sand hit him directly. Yu Feng's screen went black. He had become blind. However, that had woken him up in an instant. He couldn't see and he didn't know what was happening, but he could still hear the sounds from the game. Do you want to break our Blossoms and Blood again? Yu Feng heard Zhang Jiali shout. Haha, your information is too outdated. Old son, stand aside. It'd be embarrassing if I accidentally hit you, Yishu replied. Zhang Jiali was startled. He turned around and saw another Summer of Sleep moving aside. It didn't seem like he was planning on fighting alongside him. At this moment, Zhang Jiali finally noticed the guild tag above another Summer of Sleep's head, Heavenly Justice. Zhang Jiali instantly realized something. Soon afterwards, Windward Formation summoned a chaotic rain. 1-inch ash drew an ice boundary. Concealed light summons lined up and attacked. Dawn Rifle and Chasing Haze shot stingers into the sky. The artillery shell exploded in the air and a dense forest of thorns rained down. Zhang Jiali didn't say anything more. Dazzling Spring nimbly maneuvered through these attacks. It was tragedy for Yu Feng's berserker though. While he was out of it, sand had hit him, inducing a blind. No matter how experienced he was, there was no way he could suddenly defend against an attack from 4 sides without being able to see anything. However, ever since Yu Feng's berserker produced a Blossoms and Blood, he had already been recognized by Blossom Valley as their core god. The players from Blossoms Valley failed to remember that they were here to hunt the boss. Everyone rushed forward desperately to rescue their god. If they could do so, they would be delighted if they could also give Zhang Zhao's dazzling spring a blow in the passing. It wasn't hard to imagine how difficult the situation was for Zhang Jiali. The players from Blossom Valley were easier to deal with, but the group from Happy being led by Yi Shu was very painful. He dodged left and right, but he couldn't avoid so many attacks. Dazzling Spring's health continued to fall. In this chaotic battle, Zhang Zhao's spirit wavered. He couldn't react in time for the next wave of attacks. Suddenly, a figure came in from the slide, rescuing his Dazzling Spring. Zhang Jiali turned around absent-mindedly and clearly saw who it was. It was Lin Jingyan's brawler. Zhang Zhao's spirit shook. Correct. This was his teammate, a partner who he could rely on. The past was the past. Zhang Jiali looked around. Sun Ziping's Another Summer of Sleep was on the other side of the battlefield swinging his greatsword. Zhang Jiali returned to that summer many years ago. It had been a chaotic battle too. In the end, they were the only two remaining. That youth carried his greatsword on his shoulders and charged into the fray in a berserk state. Zhang Jiali no longer had the will to keep fighting and thought he was definitely dead, when he heard that person say, "Hey, you're pretty good. Do you want to be my partner?" The two joined Team 100 Blossoms together that year, forming the Dual Blossoms. They studied the tendencies of their opponents and created an unheard-of playstyle together. Blossoms and Blood shocked the entire glory scene the following year. And today, in the same kind of chaotic battle, the two were on different sides. The blood shadows from his greatsword were as wild as before. The 100 Blossoms style was as dazzling as ever. However, Blossoms and Blood would never appear again. Goodbye. Just like how he raised his gun towards Guild Blossom Valley, Zhang Zhao's dazzling sprint lifted up his right hand and shot accurately at Another Summer of Sleep. Blood splattered from the bullet hole in Another Summer of Sleep. He roared and slashed in this direction using Wild Blood Strike. The player in front of him was sent flying away. Zhang Jiali seemed to see a smile on Another Summer of Sleep's expressionless face. Another Summer of Sleep lifted his greatsword onto his shoulders and then turned around carefully. Leave. Finally, after saying goodbye, Zhang Jiali regained his composure and quickly realized that participating in this chaotic battle was meaningless. Everyone was here to snatch the boss. Where's the boss? With Herb Garden. Why were these people even fighting? He immediately told Lin Jingyan to leave. The two wanted to run, but Happy refused to comply and did not let the two off. Have you gone senile from old age? Why aren't you letting us go? Zhang Jiali angrily rebuked. It's more like your eyes have gone blurry from old age. Are you the only ones we're not letting go? Yi Shu retorted. Zhang Jiali focused and saw that they weren't the only ones being trapped by Happy. As soon as a pro player on the battlefield passed by, it didn't matter if he didn't provoke them, Happy would take the initiative to attack them. Hello, Zhang Jiali exclaimed. Lin Jingyan was perplexed. Why do you think he's acting so lowly? Happy's crude and rough training method wasn't within the scope of the imagination of these pro players. We can't let them keep doing this, Zhang Jiali said. But I feel like taking the initiative to attack is exactly what they want, Lin Jingyan said. Could he be threatening from the east and striking from the west? Zhang Jiali reflected on it from a tactical perspective. Luring a tiger from its home in the mountains, Lin Jingyan added. The two turned to look at Herb Garden. Happy and the Guild Alliance had surrounded them. Sure enough, the two slapped their thighs. Happy's training method was to restrict these pro players, stopping them from attacking the boss. The two were incomparably experienced gods. They saw through Yi Shu's scheme and obviously wouldn't let him go through with it. They had to escape by any means possible and rush over to aid in the boss battle. The pro players weren't cooperating, making it difficult for everyone in Happy. Happy encircled, chased, blocked, and intercepted. In any case, they got to fight with these gods, so it could be considered as accumulating high-level combat experience. The two from Team Tyranny were nipped at the heels fiercely. Team 100 Blossoms Yu Feng had been dragged into the fray. There was also Team Blue Rain's Huang Shaoshan. He had never tried escaping from the very beginning. And ever since Lu Hanwen's Blade Master was killed, he kept on spouting out word bubbles filled with declarations of revenge. Sun Shang, who had entered the battle on his own accord, had finally been urged back by Xiao Shikan. In the end, Excellent Era wasn't able to be dragged in. Those who had been watching for a while, like Guild Samsara and Guild Misty Castle, had an easier time making a move after clearly seeing what the situation was. The pro players from those two teams circled around Happy as if they were stinking piles of dung towards Herb Garden. The pressure on Herb Garden multiplied. With so many guilds and so many pro players, even with a god watching over them, it was still extremely difficult to hold their advantage. However, if Wang Jiaxi wasn't able to predict such an outcome, then his 2 championship titles and narrowly recreating Excellent Era's reign over the scene would be unjustified. When the guilds and pro players surrounded them, Herb Garden created a path. This path wasn't a welcoming path, but an exit path. Wang Jiaxi's witch zoomed through the sky on his broom and moved bizarrely through the crowd. Behind him was the boss, Shadow Commander San. When the guilds saw this, they wanted to cry. It was clear that San's number 1 target was Wang Jiaxi's witch. Usually, this target should be the first to be killed, making it easy to transfer the aggro to someone else. However, the target was the Alliance's mysterious magician. How many could catch up to him? Team Misty Rain's newly joined beautiful sisters were newborn calves who didn't fear tigers. The 2 sharpshooters rushed forward to block him. However, Wang Jiaxi's witch made a few right-angle turns and several feints, confusing these 2 sisters. By the time they recovered, Shadow Commander San reached them and slashed at both of them. How could a level 75 wild boss's attack power be a joke? It looked like a plain and simple slash, but it nearly killed the 2 of them instantly. The 2 couldn't help but feel fear. When they went to intercept Wang Jiaxi again, they needed to be more careful and shoot from afar, but Wang Jiaxi's was moving around in the crowd. In the end, their bullets only injured the normal players of other guilds. The pro players on the battlefield sympathized with these beautiful sisters. In the end, rookies were still green. They were being led around by the nose by Wang Jiaxi. Chapter 953. Knowing when to stop. If Wang Jiaxi was just simply rampaging about on his own, no one would bother him and risk drawing his attention. However, the problem was that he held the aggro of the boss. From the perspective of boss stealing, Wang Jiaxi was a core problem that everyone had no choice but to face. Before dealing with him, they couldn't take the boss. Otherwise, they would just be helping Herb Garden kill it. Wang Jiaxi wasn't a target normal players could even dream of dealing with though. Even pro players, the ones just starting out, like the Misty Rain sisters, would only end up in an awkward situation if they tried. However, apart from these 2, the pro players had popped up today were all big names in glory, perfectly capable of causing Wang Jiaxi a lot of trouble. The problem was, these pro players didn't have the time to do so, because they were struggling with their own troubles. Team Happy. Yi Shu and his group's goals were simple and direct. They didn't care about the wild boss at all, so they didn't bother spending any effort on Wang Jiaxi, who was flying all over the map. On the other hand, the other pro players were perfect targets for them. As they fought furiously with the pro players they had already engaged, they ran about harassing new targets as well. The pro players were extremely vexed, but didn't want to waste time on Happy either, so they all began to take an avoidance approach towards Happy. As for Yi Shu's group, they really didn't like the avoidance approach the pro players were taking. We came to get battle experience, so if you keeping dodging about and running away, then we can't use this to our advantage. They couldn't provoke most of the pro players to fight them, and the ones that they were entangled with, they couldn't finish off. The pro players weren't fighting on their own either. No matter if it was Yu Feng or Huang Xiaoshan or Zhang Jiali and Lin Jingyan, they all had guilds supporting them. None of them would sit by and watch their gods get led around by the nose. A few people to provide ranged support or healing was already a great help. However, Yi Shu wasn't worried about this, because their goal really was too simple. Victory didn't matter. If these pro players were impossible to kill, then it would be great if they could fight them for 3 days and 3 nights. The situation was chaotic, but it somehow managed to maintain this chaotic balance to the end. Team Happy and the pro players they had managed to engage were locked in a stalemate. As for stealing the boss, no one could really do anything to Wang Jiaxi, so the guilds began to strike at Herb Garden's normal players, so Wang Jiaxi began to lead the boss rampaging through the guilds and destroying their attack formations. Was Shadow Tactician San even a boss anymore? No one thought it seemed like one anymore. It was evidently Wang Jiaxi's summons, following Wang Jiaxi's witch, attacking and causing chaos among the guild players wherever it went. The normal players had learned something new today, that the magician was so incisive, even when stealing bosses. Seeing that their pro players didn't seem to be able to do much, they also began to lose hope. Shadow tactician Son's health was rapidly falling as he barged through the crowd. In addition to Herb Garden's relentless attacks, the damage it took from the crossfire was probably upwards of 10% of its health. It was until Son's health fell to 10% and entered the enraged state that the situation began to unstabilize. In an enraged state, Son would summon shadow soldiers. Many masked assassins in black cloaks appeared together, killing anyone they came across. Normal players wouldn't be able to win against these assassins one-on-one. Pro players had the ability to, but they didn't know if they should. What would they gain from killing these shadow assassins? Nothing. They would only be helping Herb Garden. The situation had already come to this and they had no way of dealing with Wang Jiaxi, so the guilds finally began to give up. After giving the order, Samsara, Misty Castle, Excellent Dynasty, and the other guilds had already recalled their troops. However, many people came over to watch Happy fight the other gods out of curiosity. Seeing everyone clearing the field, Zhang Jiali and the others knew that the conclusion was set. They seethed at Yishu in their hearts. If it wasn't for Yishu causing trouble, then Wang Jiaxi definitely wouldn't have had such an easy time, what with all them gods here. What the hell were you thinking, fucking around like this? Now look, have you managed to get the boss? Zhang Jiali said with contempt, believing that Yishu had completely miscalculated. Haha, Yishu laughed. What the hell are you laughing about? Zhang Jiali was enraged, and Dazzling Spring directed his fire at Lord Grimm. Lord Grimm hurriedly dodged. Speaking of, Yishu was a little disappointed. He had hoped that Tang Ru, Steamed Bun, and the others could get the chance to gain some experience by fighting pro players, but these pro players just seemed to love coming at Lord Grimm. To be honest, Yishu's Lord Grimm was more like a bystander in this battle, mostly taking command. The few times he went up to fight, it was only when he was forced to. Let's crush this guy together. People and units away could even still see the speech bubbles coming from Huang Shaoshan's blade master. Sun Shang, who was about to leave with his guild, immediately raised his spear, eager to come over. When he saw this, we probably shouldn't waste any more time here. Yeah, Shao Shkin's mechanic quickly came over to talk him down. Yishu looked around then and saw that the boss fight was over and the guild members were shuffling over to watch them. If they continued to fight, Blue Brook, Tyrannical Ambition, and Blossom Valley's players could participate wholeheartedly. Like that, if Yishu and Co. continue to fight without the help of a guild, they wouldn't be able to do much training before being annihilated. If they called their guild over to fight, that would just become a massive guild war. Not only was such a thing probably not helpful to Happy's training, but their guild would also take heavy casualties. Continuing this was meaningless. Ahem, what are we still fighting for, now that the boss is gone? Seeing that there wasn't any use in continuing, Yishu immediately expressed his opinion. This meaningless fighting wasn't something that any rational guild leader would want, so they all came to try and talk down their gods. With the gods complying, the other normal players were easy enough to persuade. The battle over on Happy's side petered out just like that. Everyone looked towards the boss fight then, seeing that Herb Garden, with Wang Jiaxi present, were easily taking down the boss, now that the other guilds weren't making things hard. It didn't take much before Shadow Tactician San was finally announced by the system. Okay, let's all leave, Yishu called to his people. Are we not fighting anymore? Tang Ru seemed disappointed for it to end. For the current her, there was no fun to the in-game arena anymore, because it was far too easy. If it wasn't for the fact that she had seen that there was more to the world of glory, she would have probably completely lost interest already. Yes, let's end things here for today. Everyone is probably exhausted, right? Yishu asked. In this chaotic free-for-all, they had been no clear goal. All they did was fight until they ended up rather befuddled. Hearing Yishu's words, everyone came back to the present and only then did they realize that this battle really had been exhausting. They had been tense, unable to relax, a continuous stream of high-intensity mechanics. This was true exhaustion. Even Tang Ru, who had been unsatisfied just now, found that she really was burnt out after being reminded by Yishu. This was also one of the reasons Yishu had called for them to stop. The Glory Pro League had a match every week. This wasn't just to lengthen the match season. Though in esports, it seemed like you only needed to sit there and there was little movement involved, it still took a lot out of you. Especially for certain areas, like your hands, which had to complete an immense amount of actions. Losing feeling in them when walking out from the match wasn't uncommon. Many players even had lasting symptoms. For example, Sun Ziping's injury wasn't really some sort of accident. His battle style had taken a toll on his hands, and his injury was the result of the accumulation of overwork. The better your skill in Glory, the larger the toll on the player, but the pro teams took careful consideration of this. Through the use of science, they obtained ways of practice while caring for their hands, and the career lifespans of pros were constantly on the rise. For Happy, they had limited resources. Sometimes, everyone had to keep playing under exhaustion and stress. If they didn't know when to stop when fighting these high-intensity battles with pro players, it wouldn't be a good thing for Happy's players. Happy's current situation was like those teams from the beginning of the alliance. They didn't have good foundations, so everything they gained had to be earned themselves, so the pro players had to expend a lot of effort. It was because of this, as well, that the players from the beginnings of the alliance found it hard to endure until this day. After Yishu's retirement, Han Wenqing had become the very last of the first generation of Glory Pro players that was still fighting matches. Compared to Sun Jeping, who had a similar playstyle, but debuted in the second season and retired from injury in the fifth, you couldn't deny that natural talent did exist. Compared to the first generation, the Golden Generation was much more fortunate. When they joined, the alliance had already seen great improvements and the majority of club structures were very wholesome already. Under these great competitive conditions, the career lifespans of these players were far better than the first generation. By this season, the Golden Generation had been in the alliance for a full 5 seasons. Compared to the first generation who had all gradually been forced to retire and part ways within 5 seasons, the Golden Generation were all still in peak competitive condition. Their experience, mechanical skill, and awareness, all of it was still at its peak, making their current state optimal for their performances. Although, when you thought about it, another reason for the first generation's rapid retirement was because a lot of players were like Wei Chen, they weren't young even before they had entered the alliance. In 2 or 3 years, their performance would naturally drop. After this, the alliance began to develop further and the debuting ages of the players would only get lower and lower. For example, Liu Hanwen, the 14-year-old all-star, could keep his title for at least 10 years, if no accidents happened. This was enough for the veterans that could only stay in the league for 2 or 3 years to cry a face full of tears. Considering all of this, Team Happy, whose goal was the Pro League, couldn't be too careless either. Everyone should do some hand exercises before going to bed, Yishu ordered the others, who were all logging off and preparing to rest. Chapter 954. An explosive increase in mistakes. As the name implies, hand exercises were exercises to stretch and relax the hands and wrists. For pro esports players, the hands were their most important physical assets. Happy had limited conditions. They could only do some general exercises. The powerful clubs had their own medical team that would design more focused hand exercises depending on the habits of each pro player. The effects were much better. Apart from needing to protect their hands, their mental health had to be maintained as well. If their hands were fine, but they felt exhausted, that wouldn't be good either. Taking care of their mental health was more complicated. Food, a healthy lifestyle, a proper biological clock, and so on all affected their mental health. Team Happy's various practice routines were mainly to help Tang Ru, Steamed Bun, Luo Ji, and Wenyi's skill level, but in pro teams, apart from helping their players improve, another important part was regulating the conditions of their players. Every person had their ups and downs. Through these scientific regulating, they had these ups and downs conform to the pace of the competitive format. Every team hoped to have their players be at their peak condition every Saturday night. As a result, how to design practice routines was actually a very deep school of knowledge. There were Glory specialists, who constantly researched this area. As for Team Happy, as they gradually moved towards the standards, these areas naturally had to be looked into. Unfortunately, Yishu didn't understand the scientific basis for these practice routines, so he could only rely on his own experience to design practice routines for each person. As for the training currently being carried out at Happy, in a pro team, that sort of training would only be directed towards practicing for their matches. A more comprehensive training wouldn't consist of practicing for the match every day because that type of training consumed too much energy. Practice was for improving, not to squeeze their players dry. Today's practice made everyone feel exhausted. The next day, Yishu didn't organize everyone to hunt pro players in the game. Instead, he arranged for a more relaxing practice routine for recovery. In the blink of an eye, another day passed. That marked the end of the week. A new week started and the bosses refreshed. After everyone in Happy went through a day of recovery, they were once again ready and waiting. Waiting in the game was too much of a waste of time. With the advantages of a guild, they could simply go on once they received the news. As for the big clubs, when the new week started, the pro players rubbed their fists and wiped their palms in anticipation. However, the teams clearly weren't willing to have their pro players waste their energy here. They had set up a rotation system. Each team had pro players come, but it wouldn't be the same few every day. Everyone would rotate each day. When match day approached, most would beat the gong and have their troops retreat to focus on the upcoming match. Happy had grasped the timing of these big clubs and took advantage of it. For example, there definitely wouldn't be any pro players in the early morning. They needed to keep a good sleep schedule to maintain their condition. As a result, Happy followed the pro team's schedules and also kept a good sleep schedule. At daytime, they waited for news from their guild. As soon as news came up, they would immediately set out. Their target wasn't the boss, but the pro players. They weren't picky with their food. It didn't matter if the pro player was a god or a main roster player or a substitute player. If he or she was a pro player, then he or she would be attacked. As a result, because Happy wasn't focused on killing the boss and instead focused on causing trouble, the various teams viewed them as thorn in their side. It had to be known that going wild boss hunting wasn't a fun get-together. It was a competition. Even though other pro players would fight each other, from an overall perspective, the boss was the objective. If fighting wouldn't help them get the boss, then they wouldn't fight. However, Happy wasn't proper. As soon as those guys saw a pro player, they would fight. It didn't matter if it was related to the boss or not. One time, they found a character, who was suspected to be a pro player, inside the city and they also mercilessly killed him. Because of Happy causing trouble, quite a few guilds failed to take down bosses that should have been theirs, and quite a few pro players ended up snatching a bellyful of anger when they tried snatching the bosses. 2 months passed in the blink of an eye. The Glory Alliance completed 4 matches this month. At the end of the month, they began summarizing this month's matches like usual, including the number of seats filled in the stadium, their TV ratings, the numbers for their online streams, as well as several other general statistics. The Glory Alliance wasn't just the tournament organizer. The Glory Alliance was also the manager that needed to keep track of the profits from running the league. From one perspective, the Alliance could be seen as a company. The Alliance's chairman was this company's chief executive officer. When the February briefing came out, many of the numbers were startling. The most noticeable was that in February's matches, the number of mistakes made by players shot up in a straight line. In comparison to January's matches, it was an explosive increase. The distribution of these mistakes was outrageous. From the numbers, the top 10 teams contributed to 70% of this explosive increase of mistakes. What happened to these teams? The staff members of the Alliance analyzed one step further and discovered that the following distribution of mistakes was quite even. Each team and each player had contributed. When they compared this data to the other data throughout the Alliance's history, the staff members would realize that this February was a new record. Numerous teams and numerous players had broken the record for the highest number of mistakes this February. In fact, many jokes and discussions had come up because of the number of mistakes in the matches this month. It was only until they summarized everything did they realize how unprecedented it was. What did mistakes mean? It meant that their condition of the players wasn't at its peak. A poor performance led to a lackluster match. A lackluster match would not be looked at well by spectators. If the spectators didn't like it, it meant a loss in revenue. It was a very scary thing for the Alliance. What had happened for all these teams to collectively be in a slump? These were all the powerhouses in the Alliance too. In fact, it was the bottom 10 teams whose increase in mistakes made appeared rather modest. Their strong suit in making mistakes actually lost to these powerhouses. The Alliance didn't dare be negligent. After organizing the data for February's matches, they immediately convened to analyze and discuss this issue. The Alliance had many talented people, and there was no lack of retired pro players, who held a position in the Alliance. This February, what exactly happened to these teams and players? These specialists quickly found the answer. The new update made it so that teams needed new materials to upgrade their silver equipment. Starting from January, the teams gradually began having their pro players go into the game and help. After the Spring Festival, this phenomenon reached its peak. There were even players, who didn't have much of a goal this season, that went to the game on match day. I have some information here. A staff member in the meeting handed a piece of paper with information to everyone. This paper shows the monthly summaries of the league after each Glory update. Everyone, take a look at the green numbers and compare it to the red average. You can clearly see that the league is affected by each update. The most direct observation is the increase in mistakes made. There are many reasons: change in equipment, different skills, and splitting their attention to obtain materials in the game. Quote. Haven't we already discussed this reality long ago? The Alliance chairman Feng Xianjun skimmed over the information and then placed it back onto the table, but this time, the number of mistakes has increased explosively. It clearly doesn't conform with our past data. That's the reason why we urgently convened this meeting. From the information we have, even though the Level 75 update had taken several years to complete, it wasn't an overhaul of the game engine. Everything was developed according to the original rules, so from conventional reasoning, the effects of this update should conform to our past data. No, it should even be said that as Glory grows, the ability for teams to adapt should be even better. The effects this time should actually be less than before. That's what the data should tell us. But this time, the number of mistakes actually increased explosively. There must be another reason. Quote. How about, we have an informal discussion with these teams and these pro players? The numbers are so clear. I think they must have the whole story, someone suggested. Let's do that then. The chairman Feng Xianjun approved of this idea. Soon afterwards, the Alliance sent people to visit these teams to inquire about this matter and understand the whole story. They soon got the information they wanted. They didn't need to summarize anything. The story that every team talked about was astonishingly all the same. Yi Chu, team happy. These two key terms made the chairman Feng Xianjun speechless for a long time. This punk, seeing this name, Feng Xianjun could feel a headache coming. As Glory's most glorious pro player, Yi Chu's status didn't need to be discussed. However, despite his outstanding achievements and his countless fans, the Alliance didn't like him very much. The Alliance's former chairman, Jin Chengyi, had once sighed ruefully. Yi Chu's existence had slowed the growth of the Glory Alliance by at least 2 years. Many people would interpret these words as Yi Chu's reign over the championship title, making the matches less suspenseful during the early years of the Alliance. But those who knew the inside matters would know that Chairman Jin Chengyi was talking about Yi Chu not cooperating with publicity. As the founder of Excellent Era's great dynasty and the undisputable number one player in Glory at the time, Yi Chu should have absolutely been that era's representative. Unfortunately, this number one player refused to participate in any activities. The Alliance could not borrow his popularity to promote themselves. In the end, all of the players that had been propped up by them were defeated by him. This put the Alliance in a difficult spot. Countless Glory fans even suspected that there's some dark secrets going on. Was there some sort of unwritten rule? If not, why would they not be supporting Yi Chu? Even after Yi Chu made an announcement to make things clear, the players were more than happy to use their imagination. Their guesses made the Alliance feel dejected and depressed. Unable to ride on the east wind, Yi Chu, the Alliance's publicity team, had to do twice the amount of work for half the results. This was why Jin Chengyi sighed ruefully, saying that Yi Chu's existence had slowed the Alliance's growth by 2 years. Chapter 955. Let's talk. Compared to his predecessor, Feng Xianjun's luck was quite good. When he started managing the Alliance, Yi Chu's era had ended, and the golden generation had emerged. The competitive scene prospered with the explosive advent of new talents. However, even though his luck was good, Feng Xianjun had his worries due to his luck. It was because there were too many talents. No player like Yi Chu, who had the ability to dominate the scene and become the Alliance's representative, had appeared since then. It truly made Feng Xianjun feel distressed. In terms of achievements, after Yi Chu, there were a total of 3 teams that had become champions: Tyranny, Tiny Herb, Blue Rain. Team Tyranny's ace player and Yichu's rival, Han Wenking, finally toppled Team Excellent Era's reign of 3 consecutive championship titles. Feng Xianjun had taken up his position as the alliance's chairman that year. As soon as he took office, he wanted to raise Han Wenking up as the #1 player in glory. However, no matter how they tried marketing it, Han Wenking's aggressive appearance made it seem like they were promoting a crime film. Games were viewed as terrible things in many people's eyes. Having someone who looked like he was a violent criminal as their representative would not be different from having their alliance beat down. In the end, Feng Xianjun had to hastily put a stop to this plan. After Team Tyranny, Team Tiny Herb won the championships. Their ace player Wang Jiexi was a player with the title Magician. Unfortunately, Wang Jiexi had a clear flaw in his appearance. He had one big eye and one small eye. In front of the camera, he would often look very terrifying. Wang Jiexi's appearance wasn't easy to work with. After Yi Chu, Wang Jiexi's 2 championship titles was more than enough. He could be considered as the leading figure during that period of time. In the end, the alliance didn't directly shirk away from Wang Jiexi like they did with Han Wenking. However, they didn't display too much enthusiasm for him. In between Team Tiny Herb's 2 championship victories, Team Blue Rain won 1 championship. The 2 leading players were from the famous Golden Generation. Their appearances and personalities were easy to work with too. Unfortunately, Feng Xianjun personally detested Huang Shaoxin. In the eyes of older people, his chatty personality was very frivolous behavior. Feng Xianjun didn't want the alliance's representative to be this type of person. In the blink of an eye, 4 seasons passed since Feng Xianjun took office. Without any suitable targets, he could only spread the net wider. As a result, the campaign to build a star became very successful. Numerous all-stars deeply loved by countless fans emerged in the alliance. This could be seen since the start of the All-Star Weekend. However, even though the group of stars shined brightly, it was always missing the very brightest one up until Zhou Zikai came. When this player rose and swept the skies, the alliance's campaign to build a star reached its peak. He innately possessed many desirable characteristics. Later on, he perfectly piled on one glorious achievement after the other. Team Samsara was the alliance's nouveau riche. Before Zhou Zekai's addition, Team Samsara was part of the mid-tier and bottom-tier group that couldn't even make it to the playoffs. But because of Zhou Zekai's addition, they were like a salted fish that moved once more. They transformed from a weak team to the current defending champions. Team Samsara's abrupt rise was unprecedented in the alliance. Besides Samsara, the former champions Excellent Era, Tyranny, Tiny Herb, and Blue Rain had all been established names since the start of the alliance. All of them possessed powerful guilds. It was the best proof of their solid foundation. As for Samsara, this weak team broke through the monopoly formed by these powerhouses. Everything had started with their new star, Zhou Zikai. The current Samsara had joined the ranks of the powerhouses. Zhou Zikai became the undisputed #1 player in glory. The leading figure that Feng Xianjun had been waiting for had finally appeared. In fact, starting from Season 7, the alliance's support for Zhou Zikai was already very obvious. However, glory was still a competitive esport. Without a championship cup, Zhou Zikai was still a bit lacking. Everything changed after Season 8. From the public to the officials, Zhou Zikai was indisputably placed at the top. Numerous media outlets rallied for him, declaring that Zhou Zikai had pushed the alliance to new heights. From the alliance's statistics, Feng Xianjun would not deny this point. After Team Samsara won the championships, the alliance's overall revenue had increased explosively compared to the previous few seasons. The new season had numerous widely discussed transfers, further pushing the Season 9's viewership to an all-time high. The Glory Alliance was moving towards an even more prosperous era. At this moment, a sudden increase in mistakes couldn't help but make Feng Xianjun worried. From the data, the epidemic of mistakes this month and its effects on the quality of the matches had yet to be extensively noticed by their players. For one, very few players closely followed everything that went on in the alliance. Secondly, players wouldn't pay much attention to this statistic. But even if the players didn't notice, how could those media outlets specifically looking for topics to write about ignore it? The media also did a monthly briefing on that month's circumstances. The abnormality in February wouldn't escape the media's attention. They would certainly be reporting it without restraint very soon. After the players became aware, the alliance needed to provide an acceptable explanation. The truth found through asking the various teams wasn't a beautiful story. They couldn't just tell these players that the lackluster quality and increased number of mistakes in the matches this month were because the pro players were absorbed in the game, right? That would be too comical. What made it even worse for Feng Xianjun was that he had no way of stopping these teams from competing in the game because this ensured that the alliance would continue to grow. The league that was established could not be separated from the game. This had always been one of the features of the league. When the league first started, it had been designed to be extremely close to the players and fans, making the Glory competitive scene stand out among the numerous other esports and prosper until today. Esports was dependent on the game. Whether it was an online game or a standalone title, keeping such popularity for so long could be considered a miracle. This was a win-win for the Glory game and the Glory Alliance. Neither side had considered breaking up this format. What made Feng Xianjun depressed was that if it was just the teams competing against each other in the game, it wouldn't result in this type of outcome. Their past data explained this point. This time, everything was because of Yi Chu and his team happy. The feedback from the various teams seemed to prove this point. Yi Chu, did he have to find him and tell him to stop messing around? Feng Xianjun thought about it, but shook his head. Let alone this request being too broad, the other side had no reason to listen. Even if the request was reasonable and fair, was Yi Chu the type of person who would just listen to orders? If not, the former chairman Jin Chengyi wouldn't have sighed, saying that Yi Chu's existence had slowed the alliance's growth by 2 years. In the end, the most reasonable decision that could be made by Feng Xianjun was to advise the teams and to communicate with them. He could not directly prohibit them. After thinking about it, he might as well convene a private conference for the appropriate people in the alliance's top 10 teams. Convening a conference for every team was very normal. Because of February's abnormality, the various teams also had their own thoughts, so they quietly responded to this time's conference and ran over to the alliance headquarters to drink tea together. Feng Xianjun hadn't called for anyone in particular, so the various teams just arranged for their usual participants, the club manager and the team captain. 10 teams. 20 people. At the big round table in the Alliance headquarters meeting room number 1, everyone was familiar with each other. Sure enough, this conference didn't seem too official. There weren't even seating arrangements. The various teams came, greeted one another, and then picked a seat to sit down on. When it was about time to start, Chairman Feng Xianjun also came to the meeting. The room was silent. Everyone knew what they were here to talk about because in front of everyone was a newspaper, the 2/28 Friday edition of the Esports Home. In eye-catching font, the headlines had put the total number of mistakes made in the Alliance's February matches. Below, there were comparisons to past numbers, letting the readers know just how shocking the total number of mistakes were. Ahem, Feng Xianjun seemed to accidentally but also intentionally put his hands on the newspaper on the table. He cleared his throat before starting to speak. This situation isn't too good, Feng Xianjun got right to the point asterisk. Now that it's been reported, the effects cannot be avoided, so I hope that everyone can hurry and go back to their regular routine, Feng Xianjun said. The managers and team captains forced a smile. How could they have not thought about it? But if there was fish, how could the bear not want some? They had to fight for materials in the game, but they also didn't want the conditions of their players to be affected. How could they not want the best of both worlds? But what could they do? Honestly, if it wasn't for Yi Chu making trouble, it wouldn't turn out like this. The team captains would also need to fight for bosses. They had been on the front lines, so they had the most authority to make any statements. The captain of the 10th place team, Team Thunderclaps Lu Hao, decisively brought out the topic of Yi Chu. The former vice-captain of Excellent Era, Lu Hao, had been transferred to Team Thunderclap this summer. Along with his teammate He Ming, they became the bargaining chip for Excellent Era's purchase of Shao Shikan. At Team Thunderclap, Lu Hao was chosen as the general among the dwarfs, and became appointed as the team captain. But how could the current Team Thunderclap be anything in Lu Hao's eyes? From the very start, Lu Hao had always been seeking for a better path. But even if he thought of a better path, he first needed to perform well. As the team captain this season, he had actually performed spectacularly, bringing Team Thunderclap to 10th place. They even had hopes of making it into the playoffs. Liu Hao would obviously cherish this type of achievement. As a result, he put more and more effort and even fought for wild bosses for Team Thunderclap, naturally in order to strengthen his team. Any pro player would spare no effort if they had the chance to enter playoffs. Unfortunately, their guild's strength wasn't that strong. Along with Yi Chu making trouble, they were doing so poorly at snatching bosses that it made Liu Hao feel ashamed. Liu Hao would obviously do his utmost to push the blame onto Yi Chu. His resentment towards Yi Chu was unrelated with him being an excellent era or not.